is Nur Azina binti Khalid. My metric number is 280660. So I will start our presentation with introduction. PPE is an example of a non-current asset held by an enterprise to assist an organization. It is a physical or long-term intangible asset of a business that has a lifespan longer than a year, and it is difficult to convert into cash. PPE are retained for administrative, rental or manufacturing use in the making or supplying of goods or service. Respectfully, those PPE must be maintained to provide or produce items or service that are not intended for sale in the regular course of business. To ensure that a practitioner recognizes PPE in according with the standard imposed by the authority, judgment is required. PPE is also charged far less frequently than existing assets that are kept for sale, because a firm can falsify the information that insurer needs. We must carefully audit the PPE process.
Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is Nofatin Atika binti Tajul Azlan, metric number 280322. I will continue the presentation on the audit objective that involve in property, plant and equipment. Audit objective is divided into three categories. Firstly, transaction. These include occurrence, completeness, accuracy, cut-off, classification. Secondly, balance. These include existence, right and obligation, completeness, valuation and allocation. Lastly, presentation and disclosure. These include occurrence, right and obligation, completeness, classification, accuracy and valuation. Next, I will explain in details for every audit objective. Firstly, occurrence. The property, plant and equipment balance shown in financial statement must truly exist at the reporting date for the occurrence assumption to hold true. Secondly, completeness. To make sure that all property, plant and equipment transactions that took place during the period are included in the reported on the balance sheets. Thirdly, accuracy. All asset addition and disposal be properly recorded in journal and posted. Next, classification. Additional and disposal of property, plant and equipment should be properly classified. Furthermore, existence. To confirm that the property, plant and equipment balance listed on the balance sheet existed at the reporting date, we test the existence claim when we do the property, plant and equipment audit. Next, right and obligation. This objective is to determine if the client has ownership of all property, plant and equipment listed on the financial statement as of the reporting date. Other than that, cut off. Property, plant and equipment addition and disposal that occur before the end of the current period are recorded, while those that occur after the current period are included in the next accounting period. Lastly, valuation and collection. The financial statement of property, plant and equipment balance accurately reflect its economic value as of the reporting date.
Hi, my name is Nura Anati binti Zaridin and my metric number is 280307. I will continue the potential risk and internal control of PPE. Before evaluating the efficacy of the client's internal control, the auditor assessment of inherent risk which quantify the chance of a major mistake in the account balance is made. Misstatement in PPE may occur when the expenditure for the repair and maintenance are recorded as PPE. Depreciation value may have been computed improperly due to the reason like mechanical fault and improper estimation of the remaining useful life. Error and fraud may occur as a result of the entity's poor internal control, which include insufficient management engagement in managing personnel with the access to the cash or other assets vulnerable to the theft, as well as a lack of comprehensive and timely asset verification and reconciliation. Internal control are the steps taken by management to reduce risk and increase the likelihood that set goals to be achieved. Control over expenditure incurred on the PPE acquired is an effective technique. To exercise this control is through the capital budgeting, which verifies that the spending incurred was properly allowed and that such expenditure is being effectively controlled by a regular comparison of the actuals with the budgeted amount. It manages the division of expenditure between the capital and revenue in the case of the self-constructed assets and ensure that the amount expended do not exceed those permitted. Accountability and utilization control. One approach to create accountability for each PPE is by maintaining the accurate records. This makes it simpler to to assert the control over the custody of such assets. For example, by the creation of the PPE disposal procedure or the physical inspection by the management. Utilization control are the method or the process of putting policy in place to guarantee the overall management and cost containment of the services offered, including adhere to the SOP and the treatment protocol. It is an assurance that each PPE was used properly to accomplish the objective of the company. Safeguarding of assets. The objective is to avoid the theft, accident, destruction, and any related losses of the asset. Asset-related transactions must be confirmed to have been properly executed, and the asset must be handled and physically controlled in accordance with the standard. This control ensures that the entity assets are protected and that any losses incurred as a result of their damage or destruction are reimbursed through the warranties or asset insurance. The company may have a process in place for designated the specific workers as responsible for the asset protection.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Fatin Sofia binti Fazila, metric number 28025. Next, I will proceed with audit plan. Transactions relating to PPE are few and are usually individually material. Thus, evaluation of control risk associated with this transaction is rarely required. An appropriate audit strategy, considering all the factors such as materiality and inherent risk, is required. A plan register is also necessary for auditing. The first one is inherent risk. There may be variations in inherent risk for assertions relating to different PPE accounts. The inherent risk for assertions may be low in a merchandising entity because plant and equipment are typically not susceptible to theft. In contrast, the inherent risk for assertions may be moderate or high in manufacturing entity because scrap or retired machinery may not be written off the books, or small tools and equipment used in production may be stolen. Next is materiality. PPE often represents the largest category of assets. In the statements of financial position and expenses associated with PPE are material factors in determining profit. It is logical to claim that an item that converts a profit to a loss or vice versa must be considered material.
Okay, third is plan register. Frequently, organizations maintain a plan register as a supplementary ledger containing information about specific piece of plant and equipment. The register documents the cost of each item, any addition or adjustment, and the depreciation occurred on it. The register balance corresponds to the depreciate value of the plant and equipment account in the general ledger. Control over the maintenance of the register is crucial for auditing just those assets susceptible for misappropriation. Regular inspection of those assets give evidence of their presence. Therefore, auditor may not need to perform physical inspection after the reporting period. Validity of the PPE register need to be established through following action, which is first, agree the total cost of each major category of PPE in GL with PPE register. Second, check the casting in the PPE register. And third, test, check additional and disposal for the period in the GL against the PPE register. And here are the example of the PPE register.
Hi and Assalamualaikum. My name is Nadia Isafira binti Zainan and my metric number is 280706. I will proceed to explain substantive procedure part. Inherent risks are evaluated as moderate to high, whereas control risks are not classified at all. This is performed to limit the risk of mistake in property, plant and equipment balance. Here, I will cover 4 designing substantives, which are opening balance, depreciation, useful life of PPE, and lastly is addition to PPE. Okay, firstly, evidence about the fairness of the opening balance and the ownership of the assets making up the balance must be obtained during the initial audit. When the company was already audited by another auditors, this evidence can be obtained by looking through the working documents from the previous auditor. Auditor must investigate the opening balance if the organization has never been audited before. The permanent audit file often contains information about opening balance discovered during the initial audit. Next, we move to depreciation. The depreciation estimates should be tested by the auditor, and the total depreciation determined should be compared with that of the prior years to identify the causes of variance. Auditor should pay close attention to whether the depreciation charge is acceptable in light of commonly recognized depreciation accounting principles. In accordance with the applicable revised AS, the auditor shall verify that each component of a piece of real estate, machinery, or equipment that has a cost that is considerable relative to the overall cost of the component has been depreciated individually. Such a component of a product could also have a different useful life than the asset is supposed to be depreciated over. For instance, it could be acceptable to depreciate an aircraft airframe and engine individually. To ensure that depreciation charge accurately represents usage, the auditor should determine depreciation method used on the assets at least at the end of each financial year. Moreover, for the useful life of PPE, auditors shall ensure that the management has at least yearly assessed the asset's useful life and residual value. The asset's useful life is often determined using various criteria specified through the standard or the entity's assets management policy, as well as the future economic benefits reflected in the asset. Lastly is addition to PPE. Orders, invoices, receiving reports, title deeds, and any appropriate customs or excise documentation should be consulted to verify the acquisition of new PPE and upgrades to existing PPE. The auditor must also conduct the necessary research and review lease agreements to obtain evidence that PPE purchased through financing lease or hire purchase agreement has been appropriately capitalized. The supporting documents and detail for the date the asset was put to use or was ready to use must be checked with regard to the modifications to PPE made during the year. The auditor should check expense records for things like repair and renewal to ensure that no new capital assets or enhancements have been added.
The last is conclusion. In verifying PPE, auditor verified changes in the recorded balance and inspect addition. Transactions involving PPE are infrequent and rare material are usually subject to special treatment. Thus, auditor rarely test control of a non-current asset transaction, preferring to adopt a predominantly substantive approach. PPE are likely to be overstated than understated. We are all aware that a company financial statement must be true and represent accurate facts for shareholder, investor, creditor, and the other to make informed decision.